All right. Welcome, Destiny.
Good morning. Thank you all for joining us today on March the 14th. Rachel reminded me it's Pie Day today. So if you're hungry for some pie, you have a good excuse to have some today to celebrate March the 14th, 314. So I thought I'd start off just telling you a little bit about myself. I've worked in adult ed now for about 20 years, but I actually started off as a volunteer tutor, just many of you did. So I used to work for the American Lung Association, and I was at a recruiting event trying to recruit volunteers for the American Lung Association. And during a slow time, I was walking around visiting the other tables, and there was a literacy council there that was recruiting volunteers for tutoring. And I was like, well, I enjoy reading. That might be fun to try and work with an adult learner. And so I was recruited to, and I signed up to become a volunteer tutor. So I'm still in contact with the learner that I tutored. It was probably 25 years ago. And she taught me so many things, especially about the idea of using technology with adult learners. And so I'll tell you a little bit more about that. In my day job, I work on a project called the Technology Project. We do, the chat looked like that. We did, design online trainings for volunteer tutors, teachers, administrators, and other staff to take. In addition to that, we also manage the PA Adult Ed Resources website. And so this is a website that has a lot of resources. There's actually a section for tutors. So if you haven't ever checked out this website, please check it out sometime and see what resources it has to offer to you. There's a lesson bank and things like that as well. So since we're talking about technology today, I just wanted to start off with a couple of things, because sometimes it can be really overwhelming to sit in a session where you're using technology, learning about technology, and especially if it's new. So a couple of things just to keep in mind today. It's definitely okay to ask for help. You feel free to use the chat, or you can slow me down and saying like, oh, I'm not so sure about something. Rachel and Lynn are also going to help me field questions if anyone has some, or let me know if I don't see them. It's okay if the technology isn't working for you. So we're going to try out using a bunch of different technology. The first time that you use technology, and this is going to be true if you're learners too, it may not go well. It may not work the way it's supposed to. It may be because of a setting on your computer. It may be because something's blocked, and that's okay. So don't let that discourage you. And it's okay. So if you just want to sit and watch and follow along, that's completely fine. If you're trying it and something doesn't work, it's okay. Don't worry. It's not, we'll get it figured out. Or you can just, once again, just kind of watch how it's working, and then you can go back and try it later on. And it's definitely okay if you're not sure what to do or what the answer is. And I like, whenever I'm working with learners, to try to set the scene of that. Especially when you're working with technology or some new concept that might be challenging, that all of these three things are okay, because that's what learning's all about. And today I'm hoping that you're going to learn a lot of new skills and ideas that you can use with your learners. So the first thing I wanted to do was get to know you all a little bit better. So I know one of you, Shannon, but everybody else, I don't think I've had the opportunity to meet before. So I'd love to learn about you a little bit more. So we're going to use something called the annotate tools in Zoom. Have any of you ever used the annotate tools before? So maybe a few of you have, but what you should see at the top of, like, where you see my PowerPoint slides, you should see a little green bar that says you are viewing, I'm guessing it probably says Destiny Simpson's screen. And under the view options, there's a drop down bar called, and then you should see annotate. Your options may look a little bit different depending on what you're doing. So what I'm going to ask you to do is to go to the view options toolbar and click on that and click on annotate. And when you do that, you should get a pop-up bar that would look something like this on your screen. Oh, great. So Jeff just learned about it on the last session. Good. So this will give a chance to kind of practice it again. Thanks, Jeff, for sharing that. So has everyone had a chance to, I'm going to go to the next slide here, but there's a screenshot here, just in case you didn't catch it the first time. You're going to go to view options and annotate, and let's just practice. So you can click on the draw and start drawing on the screen. You can click on the stamp and start stamping on the screen. We'll just take a minute just to give you all a chance to try it out and see how it goes. Good, I see lots of, oh, someone did a shape, very nice. So if you're having any problems, please feel free to type in the chat. Good. So it looks like quite a few of you all have found this. You've used the typing tool. Very nice. Someone needs coffee. It is still kind of early in the morning. Very nice. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to clear all the drawings here and let me show you why we're going to use these. So just give me a second here. Oops, I was using the wrong toolbar here. I need to use this on my toolbar, not the picture of the screen. So I'm going to clear all the drawings. So if you're teaching via Zoom, you have the ability, if you're a co-host, to do that. So here's what I'm going to ask you to do. Oops, just a second here. Okay, so I'm curious to find out what formats you use to teach. So if you could use the annotate tool to mark a line, or you could use a stamp. Do you teach when you tutor your learners, are you teaching them online? Are you tutoring them in person? Are you doing both? Just to kind of get a sense of what people are using. Okay, good. It seems like it's kind of like a mix. Okay, so sometimes people tutor in person and also sometimes on the cell phone. Great. Yeah, good. Well, a lot of the tools we're going to talk about, you can use when you're tutoring someone online, kind of like what if you were doing a Zoom with a learner. If you're doing them in person, you can definitely use them as well. And so I'll try to keep that in mind as we're talking today. So I'm going to clear the screen here for a second, and I'm going to go on to the next one. So just give me 1 second here. What subjects do you teach? So reading, writing, math, English language for learners that English isn't their first language, or something else. Family literacy could fall under other corrections if you work with learners. So to type in the annotate format, what you would do is whenever that toolbar pops up, there's something that's called a T for text. And if you click on that T, it'll allow you to type. You'll have to click on the screen and then you'll be able to start typing. So, okay, good. So someone wrote math. For those of you that put other, okay, science, good, thanks. If you want to either just unmute yourself and tell and share what other is, or type it in the chat, that'd be great to see. Okay, so it looks like there's a good distribution of all the subjects represented, so that's great. Good. All right, I'm going to clear the drawings one more time here. And oops, oh, you know what? Let me fix this here. So what are your learners' comfort level using technology? And so if you could share a little bit about what your learners, how comfortable are they using technology? And so let me just fix this slide here real quick here. Okay, so if you could use the annotate tools again to indicate where, oops, sorry, 1 second here. Okay, hold on 1 second. Let me just fix this here. Okay, so let me put up this.
Destiny, I love that even you have problems with this.
Yes, you know, that's the thing. Like, I didn't run through this as well as I should have whenever I first started doing this. So that's the thing. Whenever you're teaching and tutoring, it's fine even if you have issues and you try to recover from it as quickly as you can and move on. Okay, so what I'm going to ask you to do is, could you share what your students' comfort level is with technology?
Destiny, my levels from won't even touch it to extremely comfortable.
The whole range. And for the annotate, what you'll want to do is you should see a green bar that says view screen, view options. And if you click on that, you should see the annotate. So it looks like it's kind of a mix. The whole range, definitely. There's quite a more than I might have expected that feel pretty comfortable with technology. And, some learners might have zero experience with technology. So, and no worries if the annotate tool doesn't work.
Actually,
Oh.
Destiny, if I may, if you're
Yeah.
on your phone, the annotate bar does not work on Zoom. I learned that in the class. It doesn't
Yes.
always work. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah, it depends on the version of Zoom and the device you're using.
And that's the fun thing with technology, is it's always ever changing and keeps things on our toes. So what's your comfort level with technology? And if you could put it in here, it's anonymous, your name's not going to show up. How comfortable do you feel with technology? So just like our learners, we're kind of, there's the range. Some people feel really comfortable with technology, some people don't. So if you're finding you're having any problems with the technology during the webinar today, please feel free to type a message in the chat, and we'll be happy to try to help you with things. So yeah, okay, good. Well, thanks so much for sharing it. So what I wanted to do was to go and I like how, for those of you where the annotate tool isn't working, how you're typing in the chat. And that's something you can encourage your learners to do as well, too. If it's not working for them, they can just type in the chat, they can unmute, whatever you prefer. So let me just jump ahead here. So our objectives for today are to really define what a tutoring routine is. And you might be wondering, well, I came here for technology. Why are you talking about tutoring routines? And I'll tell you a little bit about that in a bit. Identify technology that you can use for your routine, and hopefully there's something that you can try. The goal for me, my goal is that I hope you leave today with at least one idea you can try with your learners. And, ultimately, all of our shared goal is that learners improve their digital literacy skills, they improve their academic skills, they improve their skills so they're able to reach their goals that they have. So we'll talk a little bit about tutoring routines, then we'll talk about digital literacy skills, and we'll end on spending a lot of time on tools to build digital literacy skills. So, what are some of your experiences with routines? So it doesn't have to be teaching. I'm just going to ask you to unmute, or you can type it in the chat. Think about, have you ever had a routine before? And where might that have been? Okay. Well, let me give you some examples here. So if you are an athlete, if you ever played sports, some people have like a pregame routine. Shannon shared about getting ready for the day. Yeah, a lot of times the first thing people might do is they wake up and they have a cup of coffee or they have a cup of tea. Yep, a morning routine is very, very, I think a lot of people, maybe almost everybody has a morning routine. If you exercise, a lot of times you might either follow a routine that someone's set for you, or you design one yourself. Yep, nighttime rituals. Some people have routines for cooking. This is how I always do this whenever I make this dish. If you're driving someplace, have you ever found that, like, whenever I used to drive to work, it was about an hour away. I feel like I could almost do it in my sleep because it became so routine. And sometimes if I was driving that way to do something else, my car, I would take the wrong exit, like I was going to work. I was like, no, that's not what I'm trying to do, because it was so much of routine. Bedtime, which we talked about, especially if you have children, or maybe you have your own bedtime routine. And in teaching, you may have a routine that you use with your learners whenever you're tutoring them, and you may not have even realized it. And so a tutoring routine is basically the idea that you're purposely structuring your tutoring activities and repeating those activities from session to session. And that's your teaching routine. So I'll give you an example. I'm trying to learn Korean right now. And my teacher is, a very, very nice person. But what happens every time I come to class, so we only meet once a week, but whenever I come to class, it's always different. Like some days we start with the book. Some days sometimes we listen to something. Some days we start with a reading, and it's kind of confusing. And I notice other students too, it's confusing because we're always like trying to look like, well, where in the book are we talking about? Or what are we doing? That type of thing. And so sometimes it can be hard to really follow. I'm so focused on like, where should I be looking? Should I be looking in the book? Should I be looking in this handout? Like what are we doing? That a lot of my brain power that goes to that I should be using for trying to figure out what we're doing, like for learning Korean, ends up being spent on like, well, where are we? What is she even talking about? Because she's speaking in Korean. I don't really know Korean that well, so I can't really understand what she's saying, and I'm trying to figure out what's going on. And so that's an example where, for me, if our teacher had a teaching routine, it would make things so much easier. Every class, for example, we started off with vocabulary, and then we went to reading, and then we did this. It would save some of the brain power I'm using to try to figure out where in the world are we, that I could use for focusing on, all right, let's try to learn whatever our focus is today. So a question is, how do you avoid classes from getting boring? So the idea is that your content hopefully is what is engaging people, and that the routine kind of helps people get used to and being able to make those transitions a little smoother. So that's a really good question. And Cindy, hopefully as we're talking today, you'll see some examples of how you can still have a routine, but ways that you can use it to engage students so it's not boring for them. So I'm glad you asked that. And if anyone else has any comments or thoughts about how a routine and how to keep it from being boring, please feel free to add them in the chat too. So here's an example of routine. Some of you are teaching English language learners. So, this teacher, for example, starts off every class with vocabulary. So the vocabulary that they're going to see in the reading. They do the reading activities, then they learn a grammar point and they practice it. Then they do some listening, and then they do a final review of the materials. So in this case, this teacher is teaching how to customer service. So how do you greet customers, how to go the extra mile, and how to handle difficult customers. So the routine is this column right here, and the skills that they're working on is this column right here. So let's take a look and see what happens whenever the skills now are more about going to a doctor. So still, the teacher can talk about, the skills someone needs when you're going to a doctor, and if English isn't your first language, is how do you check in? Like, what do you say to the person? How do you express your needs to the nurse and the doctor? How do you check out after you're done visiting the doctor? But you could still start off by teaching vocabulary that the learners might need, doing some reading comprehension, doing some grammar points, listening points, a final assessment. So you may not do that. There may be parts of your routine that you don't do every single time. Maybe for the skills, there's just something for listening practice, or maybe, you don't have enough time for all of these, or you're breaking them up over a couple lessons. But having this routine, for a lot of learners, and also for a lot of teachers and tutors, it makes things easier because you kind of have the building blocks of, what you're going to do when you meet with the learner. It's just a matter of, okay, what skills am I going to work on? What resources am I going to use? And hopefully that's how you still keep things interesting. Here's an example for those of you that might be teaching English language arts. This is what I used to do whenever I used to teach English language arts. I would start off with a welcome, a check-in, see how things are doing. I'd check in about last class, see how things were going. I'd start off with the vocabulary that we're going to need, talk about the key focus questions that I want them to focus on when they're doing the reading. And then as they're doing the reading, afterwards, we kind of work through the vocabulary words, discuss and analyze. And then I would ask them to write. Sometimes it would be writing a sentence. Sometimes the homework would be writing more than that. And then we'd wrap up and talk about next steps. So for me, what I found was having this routine made it easier because it helped me kind of have a flow of my tutoring session with my learner, as well as with my learners that I was teaching online. It kind of just made things flow a little easier for me. It helped me with planning. It made that part easier for me. And I'd like to also think it helped the learners kind of benefit from that because they kind of knew what was happening next. And especially when I was using technology and teaching online, I found that learners knew, okay, so after we do vocabulary, which we use the annotate tools, next we're gonna go to a Google Doc. And so they kind of got into the routine. And so it made the technology part easier for them because they knew what to expect next. It took time to build that, but it did happen over time. So what do you see as some of the benefits of having a routine? And feel free to jump in here, either unmute yourself if you'd like or share in the chat.
Students know what to expect, so they get excited.
Mm-hmm.
Like they can say they know what's coming. Like if you start your class the same way, I've had students actually start the class for me because they get excited.
That's great.
In ESL, by the way.
So planning can be easier, I see in the chat. Keeps the teacher on topic. Yeah. That's great. So, one of the things that I would encourage you to consider is following a tutoring routine and trying it out and see how it works for you, how it works for your learners. If you're interested in learning more about tutoring routines, there's actually a module that Rachel, who is our facilitator today, developed, and it's available in the PD portal. This is a website that you can go to that has free trainings online. So it's an online module that is short and about maybe 45 minutes to an hour. You can do it at your own pace and time. And so there's a link in the chat for that if you're interested. So let's talk a little bit about digital literacy skills. What are some of your learners' goals? Like, why are they participating in the program with you? What do they want to do, either while they're in the program with you or afterwards? And you feel free to unmute yourself or you can type in chat. So get a high school equivalency. What else? Pass the GED, go to college and school, learn and improve English. Great. Make friends. Good. So what you'll find is that when you're thinking about what technology to use, a lot of times what you want to think about is what skills can you be teaching learners while they're with you that they can use with their goals after they stop working with you. So for example, if someone's goal is to go to school or college, helping them to use technology in a way that they would also be using it in school or college is a great way to help them build their digital literacy skills. So pass the math GED, great, good. So I wanted to share with you, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but there are some digital literacy skills checklists. So if you're kind of wondering, well, what digital literacy skills should I even be teaching my learners? This, the project that Rachel works for, the Digital Literacy and Distance Education Project, developed these digital literacy skills checklists. And so let me just share with you quickly what those would look like. So when you go to, when you go to the PA Adult Ed Resources website, and this website might be changing just a little bit, but under workforce and career pathways, there's something called PA Foundation Skills, and that's the link that I put in the chat. The digital literacy skills checklist look like this, and they talk about what basic and computer and mobile skills students need. They talk about what internet skills students need, what communication skills learners need, and finally, what information literacy skills learners need. And so this is a great way for you to think about and help plan what lessons you're working on with your learners. And it's a great resource just to kind of go through and see kind of like, oh, well, where am I? What do I need to work on better? What am I already really strong in? So I wanted to share those with you. They're fairly new. I think, Rachel, they've only been available maybe a couple months now, maybe a month, if that. So they're kind of hot off the presses.
Yeah, I think we had sort of a soft opening in November, but it wasn't really shared until January.
Great. So one of the best ways to teach digital literacy is not to actually be like, okay, today we're going to learn how to use Microsoft Word, and then you teach them all the skills about Microsoft Word, but there's really no academic skills that you're teaching. The best way for people to learn technology skills is, and also because we have our learners for such a short amount of time, is to teach them academic skills and digital literacy skills at the same time. And so as we're going today, I'll show you some examples of how you can do that. So when you're tutoring, what you can do is find technology tools or ed tech tools that you want to use and build those into your routine. And so let's get into some of those tools. So today we're going to talk a little bit about Zoom Annotate, which we've already been using. We're going to use Google Docs, Google Jamboard. We might talk about Quizlet and share some online manipulatives. So if you could use the Annotate tools once again, so if you go to View Options and click on the jar, can you mark down any of these tools that you've used with your learners before? So it sounds like Shannon's a fan of Jamboard. I am too. Oh, good. So quite a few of you have used some of these tools. That's great. Excellent. So as we're going today, I'd love to hear how you've been using these with your learners. Feel free to unmute yourself and share. If somehow I'm talking and I don't see you, please feel free to type something in the chat. But I'd love to hear examples of how you're using them with your learners when you're tutoring. So let me clear this for a second here. And so the first thing we're going to talk about a little bit more is how you could use, when we talk about routines, one of the things a lot of times you might be doing with your learners just naturally anyways, whether you have a set tutoring routine or not, is you probably do a warm up or check in to see how things are doing, just like how we did at the beginning of this webinar. But the Annotate tool, especially if you're teaching online, is a great way to use this to kind of check in, see how things are doing. The smiley face thing is one of the things that you can do to kind of check in and see how well did you understand what we just covered last week. Have you ever heard of whatever topic you're teaching today? What's your comfort level with it, and see where people are at. One of the things I will say with the Annotate is that there's a setting that you can do whenever you're the presenter, which when you go to the toolbar, there's so to use the Annotate tools when you share, they become available unless you have it turned off in Zoom itself. But there's a way that you can actually either show the names of people that are making the notes or not. So if you're tutoring a group of people, and if you feel like they might not feel comfortable kind of sharing, like, how do you feel about technology, and do the circles and stuff like that, you can actually choose to show names or you can take them off. And so that's something that's an option under the Zoom toolbar under More, that you can show or hide names. So that's something you might want to keep in mind. So, okay, so let's see here. Let me go to the next screen here. So here's some ideas for how you might use the annotate tool with learners. You could do warm-up activities. You can do exit tickets. An exit ticket is basically where you ask learners kind of like do a check-in to see how they're doing with a skill. Maybe they have to solve a problem to show how well they understand it, asking them what questions they might have. You could do vocabulary matching if you're teaching ESL or English language arts. And for math, you can use it to sketch a word problem out. It's so much easier to be able to describe a math problem, you know, to be able to write it rather than just kind of rely on books. You can use it to circle keywords, either in word problems or in something that you're reading. And it's a great way to also have learners kind of check in to see how they're doing. Once again, kind of using either the smiley faces or if you want to use numbers or something else to kind of help learners see what they're doing. The next thing we're going to talk, so any questions, or has anyone used the annotate tools with your learners before we move on to the next tool? Okay. Christine, I see you have a question in the chat. If you don't mind, and Rachel and Lynn, if you can provide more information, I might be able to help you with that, but I'm not quite sure. So the next thing I'm going to talk about is Google Drive. So have any of you ever used Google Drive before? Some people have, okay. So Google Drive is a tool that has basically all these Google tools in one place. So the one thing is you need to have a email, you need to have a Google account, and maybe that's the better way I should have said this. You need to have a Google account that's associated with an email. So that email could be, you know, just your regular email address, or it could be a Gmail account. And so you do need to have an account, but once you set that up, and once you go to drive.google.com, and you have to be logged in, you'll be able to create a lot of different resources for your learners. And so today we're going to talk about two, Google Docs and Google Jamboard. So the first thing we're going to do is talk about Google Docs. So for those of you that may have ever had to do group projects before, like the internet became like what it is today, I don't know if you ever remember like having to like, or for work where you've had to create a document with someone else and you emailed copies back and forth because there was no way for everyone to all make the same changes to the same document at once, right? And we had to email stuff back and forth. And what Google Docs did is they created a web version of a document that allows multiple people to be in the same document all at the same time and make changes to it all at the same time if you want them to. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to send you a link to our Google Doc activity, and I'll show you some ways that you can use it with your learners. Just a note, one of the features I'm going to be talking about today, the voice to text, it's only available if you use Google Chrome. So Google's like any tech company or company in general, you know, they want you to use their stuff. And so Google Chrome is an internet browser. And so the voice to text is only available in Google Chrome, but all the other features are available on any browser that you're using, or also if you're using like your phone, it's going to look a little different, but it'll kind of follow the same idea. So there is a recording of this that's being made. And Rachel, do you mind sharing? Oh, perfect. Thanks. Yeah. So the links to the recording are going to be on that website page there, and we'll put that in again at the end so you'll have access to that. So let me show you what I'm going to do is send you a link to in the chat to a Google document here. So if you give me 1 second, let me copy it in the chat. And if you click on that link, what it should do, and I'm going to stop sharing my slideshow and go to the actual Google document here, is it should take you to this document. So I'll give you a minute. So to view the chat, the link that I sent in the chat, you'll just want to click on the little chat bubble. It looks like a conversation bubble. And there should be a link that says Google Docs practice document from me and a link to it. Okay, good. It looks like I can see more people are coming in here. So one of the things you may notice is that if you're not logged into Google, the way it records you is that it gives you animals. So right now we have like anonymous bat, anonymous grizzly. So let's take a minute and I'll just start typing something in this Google Doc on this first page. So you can just kind of see how we can all be in here at the same time and be typing stuff. So someone wrote this could be chaos. It could be chaos, and we'll talk a little bit about that. Oh, it's snowing outside. Where are you that it's snowing outside? Oh, Villanova, really? Okay. I'm in the Harrisburg area. It's pretty sunny out. Cold, but sunny. Yeah. So when you tutor learners, and here, this is what I'm going to do here. I'll let you all keep on typing here for a second. So someone's in North Carolina. Great. Well, welcome. I probably would be a little weird, probably, I guess, if it was snowing. So what I'm going to ask you to do is I just made a table here. If you can make an X, if you typically tutor one student at a time, or if you do small groups or a class. I forgot to ask that earlier. So the annotate tool, oops, yeah. So it's a mix. So for one student at a time, a Google Doc, it's not probably going to be chaotic because you're only going to have one student in there with you at a time, and it'll probably be all right. For those of you that do small groups or classes, you're right. It could be complete chaos. And so one of the things that you can do, and hopefully what I'm going to show you, are ways that you can kind of either set up the document or ways that you can kind of set guidelines for people, for your learners, before you start using a Google Doc. So even with the annotate tools, this is something you might want to do especially if you're working with a small group or a class, is, setting guidelines for what's appropriate. So the way it's set up right now is that the way this room is set up, for example, for the annotate or tools, is that anybody can type anything. And so, yes, of course, if you have somebody that's a little mischievous, they may try to type a bad word. They may try to, so you know what I mean? So setting those guidelines ahead of time, I think, is really important. So that's really helpful to know. So what I'm going to ask you to do is to scroll down, and let me just clear off some of these drawings here. Just 1 second here. Okay, so here's a way that you could use a Google Doc to teach vocabulary. So if you have a learner that's studying for the GED or the HiSET test, if you have a learner that's prepping for to go to college, if you have an English language learner, here's a way that you could set up a Google Doc to help learners work on vocabulary. So you could have assign learners a word. So for example, I could say like, okay, Rachel, I'd like you to do attack, appear, Shannon, I'd like you to do that one. And then have each learner, if you're working with a group of learners, kind of create a shared vocabulary list together in that way. And the way I did this is I just went to insert table, and then I put, four rows here, and then, however many vocabulary words you have, and you can always add more if you want. But You could have learners type in the meaning of their own word, use it in a sentence, tips for remembering. Maybe during your tutoring session, you only have them do this, and then for homework, they do these other columns here. But this is a way that you could help learners have a document that they can refer to, a growing word bank list that they can go back and look at to help learn vocabulary. So I'm going to scroll down here to the third page, and feel free to come along with me here if you want. If you have learners that are studying for the GED test or the high set, one of the things that's really important is finding evidence. And this is a skill even for any learner, regardless of whether they're studying for the high school equivalency or not. You know, really reading information, finding information, understanding whether it's something that what the arguments that the people are using, and weighing and deciding how valid those arguments are. So once again, I inserted a table and you could have people put in evidence that supports the argument, the one side, versus evidence that supports the other argument. And then here's an example of a writing assignment. So you could just have learners either create a Google Doc, or you could give them a Google Doc that has writing assignments in here. So what I'm going to ask you to do, you know, so one of the things you'll see here is Google Docs will give people clues on places where they may have misspelled words, just like Microsoft Word does. But you could use something called suggest mode, and let me show you what that is. So whether the learners write something and you review it as the tutor and give them feedback, or if you do a peer review for those of you that are doing small groups, one of the things that you could do is have them use suggest mode. So if you could look at the shared screen here rather than your Google Doc, there's a little thing in here that says editing. When I go to suggesting, what I can do is I can change this to, so this person says me often. So I could change that to, instead of me, I'm going to say I. And so then they can kind of see what they originally wrote and then what your correction is. So it's a nice way to keep the initial writing intact, and kind of also be able to annotate and make notes about what could be changed. So if anyone, the other thing you can do is to make comments. So you can highlight a word or phrase and click this add comment box here. And then you could say, you know, you could make a comment about something they did better, or, you know, so you can make comments to learners to help them with their writing. So do you want to take a moment and in the actual Google Doc, either try suggesting mode or a comment or both to the writing? It might be a little chaotic because there's lots of us here. And if you need me to review how to do that, just feel free to type a message in the chat. Okay, so to do suggesting mode, right under the blue box that says share on your screen, your default is probably going to say editing. If you click on the drop down, you go to suggesting, and that's one of the ways you can kind of change words or comments. If you want to add a comment, you highlight a word or a phrase or a sentence, and then there's a blue box that says add comment.
Destiny, my Google updated the other day, and now it looks a little bit different.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so tell me about it.
So where it had, for your editing mode, it just has the pictures of the little pencil or the little
Oh, that's great
box.
to know.
It doesn't have the actual word anymore.
Thank you. Yep. So you could do look for the one that has the pencil in the comment box there.
Cindy, what would you like us to review?
You just want me to play around on my screen, right?
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
You got it.
Okay, yeah, I was
Okay.
a little confused about that, and mine has the pencil, so thanks for that. I found that.
Yeah, thanks,
Yeah.
Rachel, for mentioning
No
that.
problem. They're always changing it.
I have another quick question. How do I save this link?
So the Google Doc link?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so Cindy, that's a great question. And Lucy also brought up a good question too. And now might be a good time to kind of talk about that. So it looks like some of you have been able to make some suggestions, maybe add some comments here and there. One of the things that you'll find you might notice is, so my name shows up like Destiny Simpson, Rachel and Shannon's name and Lucy's name showed up, but then we also have a lot of anonymous. And let me show you a little bit, tell you a little bit about why that's happening and also how you can share these documents with your learners. So to actually make a document, you'd go to Drive and click on New and go to Google Docs. So I'm just going to make a blank document here. Under the Share, when you click to share, and this yours might look a little bit different. Oh, actually, you know what? Here. So here. Oh, sorry. Clicking everywhere. Here. So under the share, you have a couple of different options. So you could share directly with someone's email address if they have a Google account. You could also, okay, let me go back a second. When you share, you can make it either restricted or you can make it anyone with the link. If you make it anyone with the link, that means anyone that's on the internet and also has the link could access the document. And so that's one thing that, you know, if you have like a class website that's completely public that you use and you direct students to, if you put anyone with the link, and say some random person was just kind of searching the web and came across your website, they could click on that link and access the Google document. So, you know, you just want to keep that in mind whenever you're deciding on how you want to share it. The easiest way to share it with people so that they don't have to log in is anyone with a link, and then you have some options. You can make it that they can only view it. If I set it to view only, that means they'd be able to click on the link, but they wouldn't be able to make any changes. If I send it to commenter, that means that once again, they could look at it, not make any changes, but they could add comments. Or what I did for the Google Doc we were all just using together was make you all editors, which means that you're able to change anything and everything. You have full access to change anything in the document. So the easiest way to share stuff with learners so that they don't have to sign in is anyone with the link is an editor. So what questions do you have about that? I'm going to go back to my PowerPoint because I have a slide that kind of talks about this. So anyone with the link, what it means is a learner can click on the link to access the Google Doc. So this is what we all did together, like the doc that we all were all in. So you could just click on the link. You didn't have to sign in. If you were signed in, like how I was signed in and Rachel was signed in, then your name did show up with any changes that you made. Anyone with the link can view the documents. So once again, if someone, you know, I don't know how they'd really come across your link, but if they were to find it, like if you put it on a public website, anyone on that link could find it. But you can't see who made the changes if there's more than one learner. So remember how there was a lot of people that was just listed as anonymous? You can't see like which learner made which change. And so that may be, if that's a really important aspect of it, you may want to set it to restricted, where you invite learners to the document using their email address. When you do that, that means the learner has to sign into Google Docs. So they have to sign into Google to be able to access the document. It's more private, and you can see who makes the changes, but sometimes it can be more confusing for the learners because they have to sign in or they don't have a Google account. So there's pros and cons with both. For those of you that use Google Docs with your learners, how do you usually share your documents with your learners?
Something that seems to work pretty well for me is that if we take, I just share it so it's generally open, I guess, like anyone with the link. And then that way, because sometimes we have students sharing it with each other if they're not able to access it or that sort of thing, it's easier, it seems easier to pass on.
Yeah, anyone with the link, I think, is definitely easier on the user end where they don't really have to do much besides click on the link. So yeah.
Destiny, I have a question about how you cross out a word without eliminating it.
Oh yeah.
I didn't see which tool you're supposed to use.
All right, let me go back to that. So let's say if I wanted a learner to like fix relax, but I wanted not to just fix it. So I went to, for mine, it says like under the share button, there's a drop down that says editing, suggesting. Depending on your browser, yours may just say suggesting or have the icon, I mean, so you'd want the little pencil with the comment box around it. And then what happens is you actually just start typing on the document. So if I highlight that word and hit delete, it deletes that. And then I can just put relax. Let's see here. You could say, you could add words here. And then you could also, if I wanted to, I could also just have deleted the 1X here. So let me just reject that suggestion. So I could just take out the 1X. And so that's using the suggesting mode. And then the learners can go through and either accept the suggestions or reject it. So that way they can kind of see like what the changes are. Okay, so the other thing I wanted to show you with Google Docs here, and I'm just going to go down to a new page, and this is great for English language learners. It's great for learners whose native language is English, but maybe they're at a level where their writing skills are still emerging, is if you go to tools and go to voice typing. So, and once again, this is the thing that only works on Google Chrome. So when I click on voice typing, a little microphone pops up and I click this to speak. And now Google will start typing what I say out loud. And it's pretty accurate in terms of translating what I'm saying into the written language, but it's not always perfect. And then I just hit that to turn it off. And so that's a great way for learners who are learning English to get their ideas down. Maybe they can speak, but they're still working on their reading and writing. The learner I used to tutor, her skills were still very emerging in terms of reading and writing. And so this was a way that she could, get her ideas down in the written word. And then from here, what we could do is use the suggesting mode to kind of make edits and work together on fixing it. If you're teaching English language learners and you're doing something called a language, is it LEA? What does that stand for? Language?
Experience.
Okay, thanks.
Approach.
Language. I don't typically teach ESL, so but that's where a learner will tell you verbally a story or about a topic, and then what you do is use that to work on vocabulary, grammar, spelling, those types of things. So this is a great way that you can use the voice to text feature. Once again, that's only available in Google Docs on Google Chrome, but to kind of help people get their ideas on paper. It's not something that you'd want to use exclusively because we want our learners to be practicing reading and writing, but it's a great tool to use to help learners either build their confidence or build their skills, depending where they're at. Okay, so the next thing I wanted to show you was something called Google Jamboard. Have any of you ever used Google Jamboard before? Oh, so Rachel shared that she had a student that used the voice texting on her phone to check her spelling. That's a great idea. So I'm typing in the link to Jamboard. This once again is another Google tool that you can get from Google Drive. You'd go to New, More, and then Google Jamboard. At least on mine, it comes under More. Yours might show up sooner. But if you could all click on the link in the chat, so you'll have to go back to the Zoom and click on the link in the chat. Google Jamboard is another tool that you could use when you're working with learners that has a lot of different features. So what you'll see here with Google Jamboard is that there's slides, almost like kind of like a PowerPoint here. And I think you can have, I think it might be 20 or 25 slides per Jamboard. And it has, you can draw with a pen, you can erase, you can add sticky notes. So let's try it out. So the toolbar is right over here. You can click on pen is the top one, eraser, select sticky notes, add an image, circle, you can type text. The laser really is just a pointer. But why don't you, why doesn't everyone first try out using the pen? So you click on the pen and then you can just draw on here. And one of the things you'll want to do is, so I'm on slide 2.
I can't get back in
Okay, let me see here.
the meeting or the anything.
Okay. Are you able to see my screen, Christine?
No,
Okay.
it says launch meeting because I had gone out to try to find that other thing.
Okay. Maybe
And it's not letting me back in either.
toolbar down at the bottom.
I don't have the toolbar anymore.
Is there something that's like a little, okay.
I have the toolbar that I normally have on the computer, but I don't.
Okay,
have
yeah.
it
Is there a
anymore.
blue circle that says like Zoom?
There's a square that says Zoom.
Okay, yeah. Can you try clicking on that? And then you should hopefully be
Oh.
able to see the screen.
Okay.
Okay,
Now
great,
I see a screen that says, let's try it out.
Yep,
But I don't
perfect.
know how to get to any of these things.
Okay, well, you can follow along, or if you want to, you can click on the link that's in the chat here. So if you just want to watch, that's completely fine too. So how about we try using the sticky notes? So now the sticky fourth one down.
Hmm.
And if you type in sticky note here, you can see how that works.
Where did? Wait. Mhm. No.
Okay, good.
How does that not work? Still doesn't work.
Okay, feel free to just follow along on my screen and you can see how it works, or just follow along by watching, and then I'm happy to meet with you afterwards if you want to talk through
Well,
this.
I can't get this. I can move the Post-it note, but I can't write on it at all. And then
Oh, okay. If you
come
double
up.
click on it, it should help you. It should allow you to type in it then.
I did 3 clicks and I got nothing.
Try 2 clicks.
It is this 3rd bar down, right?
It's the 4th thing that looks like a little square with some words.
Yeah.
Okay. So right now what I'm going to do anyways is
Maybe that's
some examples
it.
since we're almost out of time here, and let me just
No, that didn't do anything.
okay, well, you can follow along because I'm not gonna actually have people do this next section anyways. So so this is a great tool if you're teaching math for graphing the XY coordinate grid. There's a background you can set for that. You could insert an image, take like a screenshot of a passage, and you could have learners circle words that maybe they're not familiar with. You could have learners underline
Yeah,
things
geez.
that are evidence for an argument.
Is that about weather?
You could use for the you could use the sticky notes to show evidence for daylight savings time, you know, that it or against daylight savings time. So you could have learners contribute that way to show evidence. And so it's a great tool for also like solving math problems. You can almost just treat it like a whiteboard. And so there's a lot of different ways that you could use Jamboard to help engage your learners, whether you're online, like what we're doing now, or even if you're all in the classroom, you could have them get on their phones, or if they happen to have devices, you could have them use Jamboard that way too. So the last thing I just wanted to send you, and I'll put it in the chat here, is a link to some online manipulatives. So these are Let me put this in the chat, and I'll just bring this up here. For those of you that are teaching math, these are tools that you can use to help learners with a lot of different skills. If they're working on fractions, decimals, percents, time, if you have learners that are working on a number line. So these are great tools that you can use with your learners that are working on math skills. So I just wanted to share that resource for you. So in closing, I'm going to bring up one last slide here and just ask, what tool might you use with your learners? And I'll ask you to use the annotate tools if you're able to. So what's one tool or more that you might want to explore further or try with your learners? Great. Good. Well, to see that you've all found some stuff that you might be able to use with your learners. The next slide, I'm going to clear this out. The next slide is a slide with my contact information. Please feel free to email me. I'll put it in the chat here too. If you have any questions, if there's something I can follow up with. I know we went through a lot of technology very quickly. And so I'd be happy to follow up with you if you have any questions. And thank you again for joining today. It was really nice meeting you and hearing how you're using technology with your learners. So happy Pi Day. And Rachel, I think, is putting some links in the chat here that she can tell you about.
Yeah, I just wanted to remind everyone that links to the recordings are on the PA Adulthood Resources website. And please, if you have a chance, complete the survey. We do share those with our speakers, and we use them to think about options for future professional development.
All right.
And I'm going to stop the recording